Hello, and welcome to Education Chat, a podcast created by students for students. My name is Alyssa, and my co-host Alysha Paulino and I like to use this platform to connect with students in the Inland Empire and discuss important topics happening right now. Today, we're joined by Adrian Hermosillo, who recently finished his master's in higher education, administration, and policy. Hi, Adrian. Welcome to Education Chat.
Hello. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you guys for the invite.
Thank you for taking the time to come out and talk to us. We really do appreciate it. So we're excited to speak about students with disabilities. So to start, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what makes you so qualified to talk about this subject?
You know, it is definitely a touchy subject for a lot of people, especially those with disabilities. But I think for myself, just having my own personal journey and my own disability, and kind of having, the ups and downs, seeing, the light at the end of the tunnel and then those dark places really gives me a wide range of experiences. So I feel like I'm very open and willing to talk about the topic. And also, I think I have the experience to talk about the topic.
Can you tell us how being visually impaired has been in regards to your schooling, and what has that journey been like to you?
So it's definitely been an interesting kind of journey. It started in high school, right? So I was born with congenital glaucoma. So I wasn't born with my disability. It was kind of put on me spontaneously. And then that I kind of had to deal with the repercussions, kind of finding, my own way of doing things and learning how to accommodate for myself and talking to those professors. And it wasn't easy at first. I didn't even know if college was going to be a thing at the time. Unfortunately, I did have some negative experiences. I was actually taking a dual enrollment course when all this kind of started. And unfortunately, the professor, when I tried to talk to him about, hey, maybe doing some accommodations, he basically told me that it would probably be best that I just drop the course, and that it might not be for me. And, it's unfortunate because a lot of students might have experienced that or might not know how to go about that process. And luckily, having the people in my life, they were kind of helping me through that entire process of learning and being able to, get into a community college. Didn't get to go where I originally wanted to stay closer to home, just, because I wasn't able to drive anymore. But it was definitely a new experience, and there was a big learning curve of learning how to, have those conversations with the professors, going to student disability services, and getting the accommodations that I need to be successful. So it wasn't easy, but I think the journey of, getting turned down and having to figure out how to do things myself, with luckily, support, definitely made it a worthwhile journey. The biggest point for me that changed my perspective on higher education was when I went and studied abroad. So when I studied abroad, I kind of got thrown into this whole new world of you have to figure things out now. I was in Spain, it was a different language. Luckily, I do speak Spanish, but it was a different language, new environment, literally on the other side of the planet, and you have to figure things out. You have to accommodate for yourself. You have to speak to the locals, hey, where does this train go? Luckily, there was a lot of public transportation, but you come back with this mindset of hey, if I'm able to do this, I can do anything. So that's kind of, the start of my journey. And then obviously now I've, been able to graduate with my master's, and a lot of people didn't know that would be possible. So glad to be where I'm at.
I just want to say that I am super proud of you from the last time we spoke, just to hear your story thus far. I'm smiling, it generally is making me super happy, because despite all the challenges you were through, you didn't let any of them define you. And I think this is a lot about your personality and how you carry yourself. But you were talking a little bit about, the challenges that you struggled with. Do you mind going into detail more about them, if you're comfortable with that?
Yeah, of course. For starters, it was that professor that didn't want to accommodate, right? Told me to drop the course, having to, go into student disabilities, basically say that, hey, I'm disabled, help me, right? That's, I think, the hardest part for a lot of students is that acceptance of, hey, I have this need, and what can we do about it to get, that those accommodations to put me in a place where I can perform just as other students have the opportunity to. So I would say initially that was the biggest first barrier. The second would probably be just transportation, right? Not being able to drive. From time to time, it does get frustrating. You get stuck on campus for an extra 2 hours because you don't have a ride. Unfortunately, sometimes late to class because you don't have a ride. You have to really find like your rhythm and find your means of transportation. And that's another big hurdle for a lot of students, especially, depending what the disability is. Transportation, like for myself, being visually impaired can definitely be a hurdle to get across. Other than that, I think just, being comfortable and identifying with your disability is probably like the next step, especially those people that aren't born with a disability. And it's kind of put on like in my situation, per se, where it started in my senior year. It was something new that I was experiencing. You have to really like identify with the disability, and that's now part of who you are, and you have to kind of own it, right? If you just let the disability own you, then you're not going to go out, you're not going to go meet people, you're not going to get involved on campus. For me, a lot of times I'll walk into a room and not be able to see who's in the room, so I make that extra step of going like, hey, like, Adrian, nice to meet you. Or I say, hey, like, who's in here? Like, I don't see very well, I apologize, something like that. Or I'll make a little joke or like, oh, sorry, like, didn't see you there, whatever it might be. But just to kind of get, to fill the room, and then to just meet new people, get in front of people. Because it is hard with the disability sometimes, especially one like mine, but it's definitely something that you can get over.
I just want to touch back on, you mentioned that teacher that told you that you should drop the class, and how horrible that must have made you feel. And I'm sure that so many other students with disabilities have experienced that as well, and more, And so I wanted to ask, in your experience, what types of positive, like, inclusivity have you seen your college provide in regards to your disability?
So in terms of inclusivity, I think it's important to really promote self-determination, because when it comes to having that sense of belonging on campus, you kind of almost have to have like the self-determination of like, hey, I want to go out and I want to meet people, I want to get involved. For me, my student disability services, they did provide like some accommodations here and there, but I think at the end of the day, it's more important to really get pushed to join organizations, to get involved on campus, to meet people. So I think having that sense of belonging comes with almost getting outside of your comfort zone. So it does take almost like a leap of faith, to kind of like, hey, like, this is who I am. Like, how are you? Like, nice to meet you. I want to get involved in your organization. What are you guys about? And then maybe you find like-minded people, and you take a position, and now you're getting more involved on campus. You're going to events, you're meeting new people, you're networking. And I think not only for students with disabilities, but for any student, that's a very positive experience, is getting involved on campus, and just meeting people and networking. So that being said, for students with disabilities, I think that goes one step further to promoting a successful education environment or academic environment.
And I like how you mentioned that, because it's very nerve-wracking to go out there. Like for me right now, I am in my third year, and I'm having a hard time meeting people. So I totally understand where you're coming from with that. And you mentioned a little bit about accommodations. Can you talk more about what other accommodations are available for students with disabilities?
So when it comes to accommodations, again, every disability is different. So there is things like extended test taking. If maybe like per se for me, like if the room's like dimly lit, I don't see very well, they can, give me a place to take a test where it's brighter, large text for, also for my sake. But there's also for other disabilities, like rooms that are quiet, rooms that don't have distractions. They'll have, like some noise canceling headphones, note taking, all sorts of things. I think it's just really important to really go and speak with the counselor to see what kind of accommodations work best for you and what they have to offer.
So I'd like to take a second to talk about your recent capstone that you did when you were pursuing higher education, students with disabilities. What made you choose that topic, and what was that process like completing it?
I chose the topic, one, again, because of my journey, but also because there's a lot of students out there that have missed opportunities or just kind of like fall through the cracks of not getting these accommodations or not being reached out to, or there's definitely different processes that could be put in place for students with disabilities to have a better academic experience, and especially when it comes to transition. From high school to college, it's a very big transition for any student, especially those with a disability. So making sure, that those accommodations are put in place, that you're having these conversations with the counselors and the professors, that everybody's kind of looped in. And I think it's important to kind of take like the holistic approach, right? Because it's not only just the disability, but there's a lot of things that could be happening in that student's life, right? So it's important to take all things into account when helping any student, but especially those with the disability. You want to make sure that there's some type of like equity plan built into the institution, right? To ensure that, everybody's getting equal opportunity. So with that being said, the process, it was it was a lot. It was a lot to put together. It was definitely enlightening to kind of put together. I definitely felt that tying my story, I kind of did a vignette in the beginning of it, to tie in my story to kind of give credibility to the information that I was putting within the report. So I think it's important not only to share my story, but for others to share their stories. So one of the big things that I put within the report is student experiences. And a common topic that kind of kept coming up was that self-determination. And that self-determination starts at a young age. Obviously, there's those people that, in my case, where it starts suddenly, right? Your disability is put on you, and you're born with it. But things like goal setting, talking about the future, talking about like academic plans, having that self-determination and setting yourself up for success is a big part of it. And having those conversations not only with your teachers, your professors, your parents, that way they can help keep you accountable, but you have to keep yourself accountable. That's why you have to do like those goal settings. That way you have something to look forward to, and you have that self-determination and that drive.
And I really like how you mentioned that, because when it comes to schools, there's always talks about how to make campus life more accessible. But I like how you mentioned, because when it comes to disabilities, every student has their own experience. Every student's going to have their own story. So it just makes you wonder, how can campuses start with that accessibility and that need? So I wanted to ask you, what is one misconception, or what are some misconceptions about students with disabilities? And I love how you mentioned every student is different. So maybe you can talk about, when it comes to yours specifically, what is one misconception that people may have?
Right. So I think a big misconception just within institutions is that students with disabilities will bog down systems. It's going to be extra work to assist these students. There's a lack of understanding. And that's not really the case. I think there's an opportunity there for like student disability services to maybe, flag that student's profile. That way there's not this constant barrier of, okay, now I have to go get the note from the disability services, take it to the professor, get it signed every class, right? It should be, maybe flagged. So it's a process where it's like the professor is already expecting like this conversation. And it's a known kind of thing between the campus and the professor, to expect some sort of conversation. There just needs to be an understanding between like the professor and the student, that it's not going to be extra work, right? That these kinds of things they should be equity based, right? It's not that they want to be a hassle, and it's not that the students want to take advantage of these accommodations to have extra time. It's because they need the extra time. Maybe they read, like in my case, I read a lot slower than I used to before my disability. So I do need extra time. So especially if it's a text-heavy test or a text-heavy exam, I need that extra time to just go through the questions, to read the material. This misconception that unfortunately some professors might have, not all, but some, that students just want to take advantage or that it's going to be extra work. It's not. And I think that's a big thing that institutions can do better to not only provide material for professors how to best serve students with disabilities, but also just add that into like the equity plan, right? Some kind of like format to make sure that professors are doing what needs to be done.
So we've talked a lot about, your journey, your struggles, some of your accomplishments, but I'd like to talk about what's next for you in the future. Do you have any future endeavors with maybe schooling or career-wise that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, so as mentioned, I just got my master's in higher education administration policy. I'm currently working for a TRIO program called Educational Talent Search as an academic advisor. So I really have enjoyed the whole student success portion of higher education, just because I want to be able to give back to, not only students with disabilities, but all historically marginalized students. So from here, I feel that I want to have some type of leadership position, maybe a director position in a program of student success, where I can continue to, give my stories and incorporate other students' experiences to make sure that all students are getting that success that they deserve, right? There's a lot of students, again, like I mentioned, that fall through the cracks, and I don't think any student should be left behind. So that's my goal. That's where I want to be. Someday, it might not be tomorrow, might not be 5 years, but eventually that's where I want to get to continue to help students and provide support.
And I can tell just from talking with you, you're very passionate about this, because throughout the entire time speaking with you, you've mentioned equity, you've mentioned equality. That's from that, I can just tell that when it comes to this topic, it's very important to you. You're very passionate about it. And I feel like when you do get that director's position, whether it is tomorrow or next week or whatever it will be, I know that the students that you're going to be helping are going to be very fortunate to have you in their life. So keep going at it. Just keep going at it. So you're welcome. So I wanted to ask you with that, what would you like to say to any student out there that is in need of guidance or motivation or just kind of stuck in life right now?
This is something that really helped me. And it's just, don't be scared to take that leap of faith. Don't be scared to reach out. Don't be scared to ask that question. If you already are expecting the worst and you get the best, then great. If you ask to somebody for help, expecting, maybe they say no, maybe they say yes, but they say yes, great. Is making that ask, right? Taking that leap of faith and jumping into something new, getting outside of your comfort zone, getting these new experiences, right? You might find that meeting somebody is, the next person that gives you a job. Meeting somebody is now your best friend. Meeting somebody is that person that's going to connect you to a resource. So just take that leap of faith, get involved in your campuses, get involved in your community, and then just help one another, right? Everybody's human. Everybody has needs. Everybody is going to be down some days. Everybody's going to have good days, bad days. But at the end of the day, we're all human. So it's important to lift each other up when we're down.
I really like that answer. I really like that.
I love that so much.
Right.
Such great advice. I'm sure so many people could benefit from hearing your story and just hearing everything that you've been through, everything that you have to say, and everything that's still left to come. So thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you guys for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed my time here.
Thank you,
Adrian. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.